Welcome to the Studio Chat podcast, the podcast designed to be your companion in the journey of self-discovery. I'm Barbara Thompson, your host, and a dedicated therapist. I'm the founder and owner of Self-Care Studio, a private counselling practice. With my clients, in courses that I create, on this podcast, I'm committed to ensuring that you have the support that you need. I created this podcast as a space for you to feel a sense of connection and a reminder that you're not alone in this thing that we call life, this adventure. This podcast is your weekly reminder to trust yourself, live life authentically, and embrace the path that is uniquely yours. Together, we'll explore ways to break free from people-pleasing, overthinking, allowing you to claim your time and energy to live life on your terms. You'll be joined by myself as I take you through some episodes, or during the year, I'll have some special self-care experts as guests on my podcast. So if you're ready to step into a life that's truly for you, join me on this journey. Let's navigate the twists and turns of life together, and more importantly, live your life for you. So thank you so much for choosing to spend some time with me today. Let the studio chat begin. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time you're listening to this podcast, this episode now. We are in Auckland at the moment, and I want to introduce Rochelle. And before I do, we were just having a typical me. I have a really good conversation, and I'm not recording it with my guests. Rochelle and I were talking. She said to me, "Thank you so much for having me." And I'm like, no. Thank you for coming on my podcast, because if you have clicked on this episode, obviously you're interested about seed cycling. You want to get to know your body more. You want to understand your menstrual cycle, perimenopause, menopause, wanting to get pregnant, all of the above. So if you clicked on this, I'm really excited to have Rochelle in here, because I don't know about you guys, but have you noticed people are talking about the menstrual cycle more, PMS more, ovary care more, seed cycle, like always looking after ourselves. And I think we're at that precipice of this movement of us being aware of our bodies, us actually talking about it. And there's no shame in it. You know, only a few years ago, I discovered all of this, and I'm in my almost mid-40s now. And I'm not ashamed, because a lot of us have had childhoods where it wasn't spoken about. And when you think about it's happening to our body, don't you think that we should probably know what's happening with it?
Right. Yeah.
So, hi, Rochelle. Welcome to the Studio Chat podcast.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. And I love that you started with being the kind of leaders, I guess, or part of this movement of being able to talk about our cycle, caring for this incredible organ in our body that I don't think we give enough attention, which is our ovaries and our uterus. So yeah, it is a privilege to be just talking about this without the feeling of shame or embarrassment, which would have been the case even just 5 years ago. So I think we're so lucky that we're in this time. I would say, taking into consideration just different parts of the world where there's different restrictions and challenges and obstacles. In general, women, the fact that we're talking about these things, women are in an amazing time for having access to information that can help their body, help their lifestyle, and help them thrive. So, yeah, I'm super excited to be here and be part of this movement and chat about seed cycling and cycles and all the above.
Yay. And we've got to start with, obviously, you're the founder of your business, of this business. There must be a story of how you were introduced to the seeds, or your own story with your own cycle. Are you happy to share that with us today?
Absolutely, yeah. So, yeah, I'm the founder of Seed Cycle Blend, which is New Zealand's only seed cycling brand, and one of very few in the world. Actually, we ship internationally as well. But I stumbled across this. My background as well, I am a graphic designer by trade, and I'm a certified nutrition coach. It was through pain, basically, that I came to seed cycling. I always suffered with my menstrual cycle. My whole menstruating life, I had debilitating cramps that would put me out for a couple of days. I'd be bedridden. Even prior to getting my period, I would be so moody, so tearful, so emotional. lots of PMS, and just felt very sorry for my partners at the time. But yeah, I experienced a lot of menstrual symptoms, and a lot of people around me would say, oh, it's just part of being a woman or being a female, and that's what happens when you have a cycle. And these stories and narratives that have been passed down from decades of women before me. But I'm a bit curious, and I thought, I want to know why these things are happening. Surely there's a reason why I'm getting cramps and mood swings and PMS and all these things. What's going on here? And that's what took me down the road of researching, trying devices, painkillers, all these things that could try and help me. And it wasn't until I understood that through research, and then at the time going into studying nutrition to be a nutrition coach, understanding that it was a hormonal imbalance or irregulation that was causing things like cramps, mood swings, PMS. And then once I discovered that, I went down that rabbit hole, learned as much as I could. And it was actually in a cooking book that I found the seed cycling protocol. This book was called Cooking for Hormone Balance, because once I understood that it was hormones, and I also researched the power of plants and nature and food, I went straight into the food as medicine kind of protocol. And the seed cycling protocol was in this book. I thought, I've got nothing to lose, other than a bit of pain, hopefully. And sure enough, after a couple of months of trying seed cycling, this protocol of rotating the specific seeds, which I'll go into more detail about, my pain and my cramps disappeared. I was calm before my period. I was kind of just surprised that I didn't have any kind of symptoms before my period. And then the cramps started to reduce each month until I just wasn't experiencing them anymore. So I trialed it for, 1 or 2 years before I realized that as a graphic designer, I can come up with the brand, the packaging, the website. I can kind of create everything and make a ready-to-use product for women who are busy and but still want to get the benefits of seed cycling. So yeah, here I am now. We have an online store. I'm doing talks on the cycle, and trying to help as many women have easier cycles and cycles that they can even love. So yeah, that's where I am today.
Thank you so much for sharing that, because I know by the sounds of it, your symptoms and what you're experiencing, was it holding you back from life? Like, was it like the fact that,
Oh,
and it was
miss out.
the anxiety of, oh, my period's coming. I think people can resonate with that. Oh no.
Totally. And I actually did with my community on Instagram, I did a poll of what is the most frustrating thing about having menstrual symptoms. And I put a few options up there. And one of the things that came up was predictability, because you don't know if you've got an event, or you've got a special occasion, or you've got a work thing, or, you don't know what is in the calendar that could be wiped out because your symptoms come along. So it definitely does hold you back. And I think part of reframing the conversation around cycles is understanding that it's not normal to have these symptoms. It's common, definitely common, but it's common because we haven't asked why we are experiencing them. But now we're starting to ask, and that's really important, because that leads us to solutions like seed cycling, for example, and other hormone balancing tools. So it's really important to ask questions. Don't just accept the stories that have been passed down from generations. Sometimes certain things are true in traditional senses, but in this case, we now know with the science that we have that it's not normal. And you don't need to be held back from these special occasions or held back from your life. I spoke to a mentor that I had a few years back, a male mentor, and I was explaining what Seed Cycle Blend was and the product, and he said, oh my gosh, every month, do you have one day that you can't get out of bed? And I was like, yeah, one day a month, I can't get out of bed. And he was like, I would spend every single dollar I had to sort that situation out. And I was just like, when it's so normal and you are so used to having, a day off here and there each month,
Yeah.
you just accept it. But it's not okay when you step out and you go, if a man, for example, knew that each month he would be in pain in bed, imagine, like you can't, it's like something's being taken away from you. So yeah, it definitely felt like it held me back. And another thing as well was sometimes because of our symptoms, it can really make us hate our cycle, and think that it sucks, which is really challenging, because when we think of like body shaming, for example, we think about the exterior and different aspects of what we see on the outside. But when we say I hate my cycle, you're basically shaming your own organs. You are saying you hate this part of your body that actually has the potential to create life. But in the other sense, I can understand why you can hate it, because there's so much pain. Yeah, and our mission is really to reframe the story around our cycle and say that our symptoms are actually our body talking to us. And when we tune into those symptoms, just like we tune into anything, when we tune into our body in general, we can start to get the answers, start to take care of our cycle, and start to love this beautiful part of our body.
Yeah, because I think when we have that monthly, cycle of the symptoms, it can affect not only our work, but it can affect our relationships.
Oh, massively. Yeah, absolutely. A lot of the symptoms are psychological. So you have those categories of the physical symptoms of the menstrual cycle, then we have the psychological symptoms of the cycle. And psychological, pardon?
Can we quickly talk about those before we go into the seed
Yeah,
cycle?
let's dive in.
Because I think people are like symptoms. So physical and I think physical would be, I'm just gonna do it off the top of my head. Let's go, because I don't have them after being off the pill, I don't really have many. So I actually have to think about it now of when women in front of me, what do I hear? Obviously the cramping at ovulation time, like the really icky, painful feeling at ovulation time, painful periods, painful back, heavy bleeding, blood clots. What else do I hear? Mainly just the severe pain or the mood swings, insomnia, anxiety. I'll let you take over the rest.
Yeah, so if we're going into like the psychological symptoms, there can be feelings of depression. You can get that just before your period, and I'll explain like what's happening there is, and maybe we can go into this in a bit more detail later, but the hormones, when they're dropping, and if you don't have enough progesterone, which is your calming hormone, you can get the exact opposite of that feeling of calm and relaxed. You can feel anxious, you can feel depressed. There's some really horrible feelings that can come up, especially as well. Anxiety and fatigue are really big ones for women, because women in general will hold a lot of the mental weight at home and at their job. Like we're wired to be nurturing, and therefore we can tend to carry a lot. So yeah, when the menstrual cycle isn't in good shape or in a good place, those psychological symptoms can really start to affect our life. And as you say, in our relationships, there's times where I just didn't even recognize myself. I'd have an argument with my partner, and a few days later when I have my period, it's like, oh, that was this. And it's so easy to something that I feel, and maybe this is a bit controversial, but when we joke about, I was such a dragon just before my period, and now I'm fine and I love my husband, I think there's something problematic about making, like there's an element of relief, like I feel seen, yes, that happens to me, but I think if we perpetuate the story that it's okay for us to be lashing out at our partner before our period, or feeling super depressed and low, if we perpetuate those stories through jokes and memes and things like that, I don't think we're going to move forward to the solution. It's what stops us from asking questions and going, is that actually okay? And I would say that we deserve better than that. We deserve to feel calm and relaxed and be able to have a conversation with our partner without ripping their head off, you know? So yeah, there's a whole lot of umbrella of symptoms, and there's probably ones that I've missed out as well. But the ones that I see affecting people the most is the premenstrual syndrome, PMS, mood swings, feelings of anxiety and depression. Those can be really hard for women to try and navigate. And I'm sure you see that in your practice as well.
I do, because a lot of people come in and they'll label themselves, which, I'm not a fan of. I've got anxiety and depression. And most sessions, when I have someone, especially a female, sitting in front of me, I'll go, we're talking about something heavy, or it even dictates what I share in a lesson. If I say to someone, I did it last night, I said, do you mind me asking, where are you in your cycle? Some people can answer me straight away, some don't. But then I have another conversation with them. But the ones that can go, yep, they get their phone out, or they go, oh, I had my period 2 weeks ago. And if they're sitting in front of me and really presenting that, that's still that 2-week window where they should be feeling upbeat and they can take on a lot of information. And so when I've got someone in front of me that's not feeling like that, I'm like, okay, all right, I've investigated that. Let's look at something else. So for me as a practitioner, it helps me so much to be able to serve the person in front of me, really help them and understand their body, maybe quickly before they do. But that's the thing, is people are quite quick to go, because when it's dark, it's dark. Especially when it's hormone related, and you feel that heaviness of depression or anxiety, it's something that, unless you've experienced it, and when you're in it, and then when it goes, if you don't record it and you don't note it, it's like when people go, oh, I haven't slept well, I haven't had a good night's sleep. And then if you were to get someone to document, okay, write down how many hours sleep, and it may be 1 or 2 nights in a week that you might get 4 hours, but the rest you've got 7.5. But the narrative you're telling yourself is, oh, I've had shit sleep, right? So it's the same with this. When you're feeling anxious or depressed, and I'm not discounting it, but what I see is time and time again, people really being hard on themselves, going, I'm broken. There is actually something wrong with me. I'm so dark. I'm so depressed. I've got everything in my life that I should have. Why am I feeling like this? But when we don't document it and, like you said, question our body, okay, our body's trying to tell us something, what's going on. We get busy with everything else, and then it comes up again. And I don't know about you, but most of the time I don't even know what day of the week it is. And I can't believe we're in May. So time is just zooming by, and a month comes pretty quick. So if you're getting heavy symptoms of depression or anxiety and you don't note it, or you're just not aware of it, it may feel like you're that all the time. So you're going to go, I've got anxiety, depression, I need to go to my GP and get a tablet for it, rather than stepping back and going, hang on, let me just do a little mark in my diary, a little sad face or a little flower or something. These are the days that I'm feeling crap and really down. Let me just sync that up with my cycle and see, just let's get curious, as you said, let's just see what's happening.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, so I love what you said about kind of stating I've got anxiety or depression. I think it's important to discern that, like, have the difference between feeling anxious and depressed and being anxious and depressed. I think those two states of being are very different, because feeling a certain way is transient, whereas if you're in a constant state of depression and anxiety, that needs to be addressed in a different way.
Yeah.
And I love that you're able to bring this other layer, which is such an important layer of our biology and physiology of the menstrual cycle, into the picture, because that simple thing of not having enough progesterone in the luteal phase, for example, and being estrogen dominant is enough to tip anyone over the edge. Like we're meant to have that progesterone. When it's not there, we're experiencing these horrible feelings and symptoms, and that's our body saying something's not right. Can you please help me? And that's where initially people think when I've got pain or I've got feelings of depression or anxiety, I need to go and get something for it. But sometimes it's like what you said. First, it's checking in with yourself and going, where am I in my cycle? That simple tool can provide so much relief for people. And that's one of the biggest parts of being able to approach things like anxiety and feelings of anxiety and depression is going, oh, it's okay because I'm actually at this stage and I can be a little bit more gentle with myself. And maybe I can adjust my routine for today, or maybe I can add in just 5 minutes of breath work or just sitting down and not looking at a screen, or, it's that layer of menstrual awareness is going to provide so much relief. And then instead of going, let's treat the anxiety or let's treat the feeling of depression, let's treat the root cause of that, which is the hormonal imbalance, So instead of taking something that's going to essentially provide maybe some relief, but it's not going to really heal the thing that is causing that imbalance in the first place. So I love that you provide that extra layer of education and self-assessment for females, because it makes a huge difference. And there's a body of research that's coming out on many things like ADHD and how in women the menstrual cycle can flare up ADHD at different stages of the cycle, for example, because of those hormonal fluctuations. So yeah, it's amazing. I think it's such a great way to approach, these kind of more psychological symptoms as well.
Yeah, for sure. But I want anyone listening to this, and I'm sure you may be the same, I'm not going to speak for you, but I was so out of touch with my body, especially when I was younger. I would just have my period, take a Panadol if it was sore, oh, it's
Yep.
painful, do exercise because it will make me feel better. Then obviously went on the pill and just really, I didn't, and I feel a little ashamed, but I'm going to own it. I didn't care. I actually was just like, oh, it's a monthly thing. I'll sort it. I was so disconnected with my body. So I want people hearing me now, the way I talk, the way I know my body and stuff. I'm 43 years old. This happened probably about 6 or 7 years ago that I started to think like this and that. So I want anyone listening to this, whatever age you are, don't think, oh, how is Barbara, how does she know all this or whatever, or I don't know this. I didn't know this either. So don't worry if this is all
Oh,
new.
me too.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe Panadol was my best friend.
Yeah.
Like it's when we don't know, we don't know. And I don't think I know there can be that feeling of shame, but at the time, what else did we know? And I think it's important for us to give ourselves grace that not only was our environment not super supportive in terms of educating us on these things, how are we supposed to reach that information when we are literally told this is what you can expect, end of story? Like that there's nothing beyond this. So of course we're all just going to go, cool, well, I'm just going to find ways to deal with the pain. And you're right, it takes years of practice, like tuning in with your body. And it can be so scary. Like how often are we told, especially in those first few appointments of being on the pill, where it's like, you don't want to get pregnant, do you? So you should take the pill. So we're starting with fear when we get into the realm of our hormones and, oral contraceptive.
Mhm.
And if we start with fear, then we have to unlearn that fear and go, well, I need to get to know my body. My body is wise. It is, it's self-healing. It knows what to do. I just need to trust my body. So it takes years to go from like, I don't want to get pregnant. I think I can get pregnant every day of the month. So I don't want to even get pregnant, to I'm going to use the symptothermal method to track my cycle and for contraception.
Yeah.
It's years between those 2 points, unless you can kind of radically, which is possible too, you can radically go, I'm not afraid anymore. I trust my body, and I'm going to learn more about it. That's possible too.
But also anyone listening to this themselves, or if they've got daughters or they've got cousins or nieces, the pill also masks. So a lot of the time you'll be put on the pill for acne, for heavy periods, for painful periods. Let's put a bandage on it and worry
Yeah,
about it later.
yeah,
Um,
totally.
just that conversation itself, that might change someone's train of thought listening to this. So, okay, one thing I do want to mention, we're almost getting into the seed cycling, is if you're listening to this or you've got brothers, husbands, work colleagues, what I want you to do is jump on Rochelle's website, and on her, I think it's on your homepage, there's actually like a cool diagram that shows you the woman's cycle for the month and all the different levels of hormones and how they fluctuate between each week. And then you've got a really cool slider that slides across that shows you women's cycle in a month and the men's cycle in a month. And when you go across, you'll see what the men's cycle is doing in the month and what a woman's. And I think that's a very visual, helpful tool. If you know nothing about your cycle, you know there's hormones, you know it kind of changes. Have a look at that diagram because I think it will change your life.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I think one way of, so I go to expos and, places to share seed cycle blend, and we have that diagram as the main thing that we show people, and we say, this is your cycle. And sometimes they have a partner with them. And I say, this is your cycle, because males have a cycle too. They have a 24-hour fluctuation of testosterone. If we're just talking about sex hormones, there's a whole lot of other categories, but we're just focusing on sex hormones. But females have a 28-day cycle, which means that we are different every day of the month. And just that little bit of information can help us to have some grace, first of all, have some, like a little bit of respect and reverence for this body that we're in. But also go, cool. So if I'm different every day of the month, surely that means my nutritional needs, my rest, my exercise will be different throughout the month as well. And then you go on that journey of cycle syncing, for example. So yeah, I love that graphic because it's just a very clear way of displaying the differences between males and females and how we need to have a nuanced approach to caring for the female body.
Yeah, and I think you'll get a good reaction at the expos. Be interesting to be a fly on the wall to see the guys, the men's reaction of,
Yeah.
That's why.
Yeah, totally. And like most of the time we get a reaction of like the woman looking to the partner and being like, see, gosh, you're lucky. Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
because we've got the story that our cycle is so much work and it's so complex and all these things. So it's the general consensus is that men have it good. It's so simple. They're 24 hours, and women are so complex and they're hard work. And what I'm really trying to do is present the gifts of the cycle to females especially, and how males can help. I really like the approach of inviting males into this conversation and welcoming them into being a support for females. I think if we are going to kind of blame the patriarchy and if we're going to get angry at men, basically, that's not going to help men help us. And we really need to work as a team with our male counterparts and colleagues and siblings, friends, whatever, to normalize the need for cycle syncing, for example, and normalize supporting our cycle and being different throughout the month. So yeah, I welcome any men who may be listening to this, which not sure, but that would be cool.
Few. Yeah, I think there's a few. Hello.
Yeah, hello, welcome. And yeah, you're a very important part of this puzzle as well because you can be very supportive and spread the word about how important it is to be supporting female physiology.
For sure. So when we talk about seed cycling,
Yes.
where we're going to start with that?
Well, what is seed cycling? So to understand seed cycling, we need to understand the phases of the cycle. And I don't know what the level, like what people understand about the phases of the cycle. But basically the hormones are changing, as you will have seen in that graph. hormones are changing, and as they change, we have different nutritional needs throughout the cycle. The 4 phases. So I like to tell people that biologically there's 2 phases. Okay, there's the follicular phase, which starts from the first day of your period until ovulation, which is when you release an egg from your ovary. And then it switches into the luteal phase, which is from ovulation until your next period. But what the 4 phases are breaking down the cycle into the 4 main events of the cycle. So you've got the menstrual phase, which starts on that first day of your period, obviously, ends on the last day of your period. That is your menstrual phase. Then you go into the follicular phase, which is essentially the second half of that follicular phase. And then we have the ovulatory phase, which is around 5 to 7 days. And that's when you are basically getting ready to ovulate and ovulating the egg. So this is when, for example, you can notice egg white mucus if we're looking at the physiological symptoms of or signs of ovulation or the ovulatory period. And then we go into the luteal phase, which is just after the ovulatory phase and ends when your cycle starts again. So we've got those 4 phases: menstrual phase, follicular phase, ovulatory phase, and luteal phase. And each of those phases have different levels of hormones in them. So what is seed cycling? Seed cycling is rotating specific seeds in fluctuation with those phases. We break it down into the 2, which is the follicular phase. And I hope I'm not kind of confusing you here. I want to try and make
people come here to listen. No, it's good. Keep going.
Right.
Yeah.
So we have the first blend from the first day of our cycle into ovulation. That's the foal blend. And what that has in it is, I'll say the 2 blends and then I'll go into the science of each one. So you've got your foal blend, first day of your period until ovulation, and then you switch. Or if you're not ovulating, for example, you can cycle with the moon phases, which has a similar amount of time to the cycle. So roughly 28 days, or it is 28 days. Yep. And then you switch to the loop blend from ovulation until your period. And each of these packs have different nutrients in the seeds that are going to help to regulate your hormones, which is what will help you to decrease your symptoms of the cycle, menstrual symptoms. So the science, Emma, is that all kind of clear? Is there any...
Yeah. No, that's very clear. It's really...
I know that part is a little bit intricate, so I like to try and break it down as clear as I can. So how does it work? So there's nutrients in the seeds that are going to help to regulate levels of hormones. So one particular nutrient is a lignin, which is a protein in the seed. It's called 7-hydroxy materazinol. It's a bit of a mouthful, but basically it will come into, so you have cells all over your body, right? You have receptors on those cells. So say this is a little receptor on a cell. The nutrient will come in and plug into that receptor on the surface of the cell, and it will check if you have too much estrogen or too little estrogen. And what it will do is it will either block estrogen production or it will stimulate estrogen production. So it's this little incredible nutrient, this lignin, that will plug into your body, plug into the receptors on the surface of cells and check if your body needs more or less estrogen, basically, and it will help to stimulate or block that. What it will also do, there's another nutrient called sitosterol, sorry. And this basically, and this is found in the pumpkin seed, this will attach to excess estrogen and flush it out of the body, because a really important part of balancing hormones is making sure that when you produce the hormones like estrogen, testosterone, progesterone, that you use the hormones and that you don't recycle them back into the body, because this can cause toxicity or symptoms and flare-ups. So it's really important to be able to detox the excess estrogen, for example, from the body, so that you don't recycle it again. And this nutrient in the pumpkin seed is amazing for that. It will attach to excess estrogen and flush it out of the body. So that's the full blend. Are there any like...
No, it's interesting because it's obviously plants is medicine, and when you go back to ancient times and different cultures, they use a lot of seeds and spices and plants.
Yes, yeah.
But it's so cool because I would, if you were to say to me what seed cycling or how does it help, I'd say you have the seeds and it boosts your hormones, like in a real simplified way, which you've said it plugs in and it reads estrogen and it either increases or decreases. But what I didn't know, like with the pumpkin seed, is how it flushes out. Oh, you've got too much of this. Let's go. Let's release it. Holy shit, I didn't know that. So that is really, and just from one little seed.
A little seed. And the difference with like sprinkling seeds on a salad and seed cycling, which is taking 2 tablespoons of each blend, is that you're having a therapeutic dose of the seeds. So it's not, and a therapeutic dose is what causes a therapeutic effect on the body, which basically means that it's going to, when you have an increase of something, it's like if you have a concentrated dose of something, that's when your body can respond to it. So that's the difference with seed cycling and like adding some seeds to a salad. It's like the seed cycling is a proper, like a whole food supplement that you're taking in 2 tablespoons daily. So the second pack is the Loot blend, and this has, and I forgot to say, full blend has flaxseed and pumpkin seed. And the Loot blend for your luteal phase has sunflower seed and sesame seed. And sunflower seed is one of the known seeds that has some of the highest potency of pantothenic acid, which is a B6 vitamin, I believe. And pantothenic acid is incredible for those psychological symptoms because it will help with the with balancing the neurochemistry, basically. Pantothenic B vitamins are amazing for the brain, basically. And sunflower seeds are found to have some of the highest forms of this vitamin. And then you also have sesame seed as well. And you'll find there's, what's the other one? Selenium, that's right. So selenium is an incredible nutrient that what it does, it increases the potential to create more progesterone. So you can't get, unlike other foods that have estrogen-like properties, you can't get foods that have progesterone-like qualities. But what you can do is help the body to produce more progesterone. And that's what selenium is amazing for. And that's what's found in the Loot blend as well. And what it also does, the kind of final piece of the puzzle, is when you ovulate, an egg bursts out of a little sac, right? There's a little follicle that we call, that's why it's the follicular phase. The egg bursts out of the sac and then you've ovulated. Now you're into the luteal phase. This sac that's left over is what is telling the uterus or sending the signal to create more progesterone. So that sac is still kind of doing a job, even though the egg is out of it. So what happens with that is when you have nutrients like selenium, it can help maintain that sac so that you can produce more progesterone, which is, in the second half of the cycle, that's really the goal, is how can we get as much progesterone as possible so that we can feel calm, relaxed, and balanced before our period. So yeah, that's how it works. You take 2 tablespoons daily, you switch the packs over depending on where you are in your cycle, and you add it to whatever you're already eating for breakfast. So it's pretty simple.
Okay, so you can add it in a shake, on your porridge, on your whatever. So it'll be kind of tasteless, isn't it, if it's seeds?
Yeah, it's obviously everyone has different preferences, but they're seeds. They're going to have a more kind of savory flavor to it. Some people like the full blend. I like to make more sweet. I add it to everything. Like I had scrambled eggs this morning and I put my full blend on top of that. So it goes with everything. but they're seeds, and we know what seeds taste like. And it's just, working that. If you don't want to get the flavor, for example, throw it in a shake, like throw it into something sweet. We've got a little recipe book where we make bliss balls, which make it easier to have your daily dose. So they're super flexible. I didn't want to add anything else into the mixture. I think I really like having just the seeds so that people can freestyle their morning routine, whether there's protein shake or anything else that they want to add to it as well.
Are the seeds from New Zealand, or where do the seeds come from?
Yep. So we've got a combination of seeds from New Zealand and around the world. There's certain seeds that can only grow in certain parts of the world. We're also working on trying to get as much like local as possible, but it's all certified organic. And the most important thing for us is that the farmers of the crop make the decision about the crop. So not the people in the office that are thinking about the money. It's the actual farmers that make decisions about what's best for the crops of the seeds. And when it's certified organic, we make sure that everything we use, even down to our cleaning products when we are manufacturing the product, is natural and certified. So that's really important to me as well, because we all know that chemicals can be endocrine disruptors and not be great for our hormones too. So yeah, that's a really important aspect of the product.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So anyone listening to this, I just want to ask you a question. Why do a lot of us not have high progesterone levels? Like, what decreases our levels of that to make us feel anxious, depressed, and really down in that second big phase of our cycle?
There's so many factors, and it's very dependent on our medical history. And for example, the pill can really deplete B vitamins, for example, and in the way that it can affect how we absorb nutrients in the gut, and therefore it just kind of anything we eat slides through. But I would say the root cause of most of the kind of depleted progesterone levels is stress.
I was just about to say that.
I know it's so cliche, but
Yeah.
really, I think it's this battle. I even experienced it myself as a businesswoman. I'm so excited by life and doing these things, and I love running my business and helping people. But then I also want to relax and do nothing and not feel like I have to do any work, But there's this constant kind of juggle between like, this is so stimulating, this is so exciting, and I need to reduce all the stimulation around me and just rest. And I think that's one of the hardest things for people to do. I still struggle with it myself.
Yeah, same.
Yeah. So it's like, and when I talk about stress, there's different categories of stress. We can have physical stress, whether we've got an injury or, something's happening with a different part of our body that's causing stress. There's nutritional stress if we are having foods that are inflammatory or that our body isn't quite coping with. And you can have hormonal stress when you're going through different phases of your hormonal life, from menstrual to perimenopause to menopause. And you can have psychological stress, which can sometimes just be like 20 emails in your inbox. And it's like, oh my gosh, how am I going to get through that? And it just releases this little bit of cortisol. And yeah, all of that can affect our cycle. So when we have stress, it sets off cortisol, which communicates to our brain that we are in a level of danger. And therefore, things like reproduction aren't a priority. And what happens is our signals will get disrupted by the stress, so that our body can talk to us and say, hey, something's not right. Can you have a look at this? So yeah, a big answer to the question, but I would say stress in many different forms is the root cause of our hormonal imbalances, and it's getting those things corrected. Nutritional stress with seed cycling, exercising in the right way that suits your body, or resting when you need to, guilt-free, for example.
Resting guilt-free. I think a lot of us struggle with that one. Yeah, is seed cycling for any age and any stage of your life?
Yeah, in general it is. So There are exceptions. So when you're pregnant, for example, your progesterone, your estrogen are going up. They're slowly increasing. And so unlike the fluctuations of progesterone and estrogen throughout your cycle, those two hormones are starting to increase as you build a baby, basically. And you're also wanting to develop and produce your prolactin, which is the breastfeeding hormone. So that's the time that I wouldn't recommend people seed cycle, because you don't have a cycle to, seed cycle with.
Yeah.
I'd also avoid it when you are breastfeeding at the very first stage. If you're wanting to get your cycle back, that's a different story when you're transitioning from breastfeeding into your menstrual cycle again, for example. But the seeds can be strong, and they can sometimes interfere with the prolactin hormone. So not seed cycling when you're breastfeeding is recommended. But other than those times, going through perimenopause, absolutely, really helpful. Going through menopause as well. Post-menopause, there's something about still seed cycling, even when your ovaries have essentially retired. There's still a cycle going, with women who don't have their ovaries ovulating every month. And that's when you would cycle with the moon, and you get all the great macro micronutrients of the seeds, and it can be very just a nice ritual to tune into the cycle that you still have, but in a different way, like with the moon, with different kind of environmental energy, for example. So yeah, in general, your menstrual phase or your menstrual life, you're through perimenopause, menopause, postmenopause. It's a beautiful ritual to have throughout each of those hormonal stages.
Yeah, I think a lot of people today are so confused and overwhelmed with, oh my God, can't drink tap water, and we need to do cold plunges, and we need to do saunas, and then we need to get all our sleep, we need to mouth tape, we need to, what are all the other
We're
things?
stressing ourselves out.
Yeah, right. And so I think if someone's listening to this, be like, oh God, is this something else I have to add? But I think it's seed cycling is very simple. And it's kind of like your base level foundation, like the cold plunges and the saunas, are not for everyone too. So everything has its place, and
Yes.
biohacking and getting to know your body. But I think let's just bring it down to this is natural. This is very simple. And I think as a female, with or without a cycle, I think that's a really good place to start.
Yes, totally. And that's really what I want this to feel like for people, that it's not this wild biohacking thing, even though it secretly is, but it's not, it's not this intense thing that's going to take up a huge part of your day, or actually feel like a lot of work. And I would say to people as well, if you've already got 10 things, don't add seed cycling. There's no point in us adding to the stress of our lives by trying to have our health in perfect condition. I think sometimes that can be just as detrimental as trying to do 100 biohacking things.
Yeah.
And also doing your research, I'm talking as the person who created this to solve my own problem. But there's heaps of literature out there now. There's even last year we had there was the first clinical trial of seed cycling as an adjacent treatment for PCOS. And they basically compared a common pharmaceutical drug, metformin, with seed cycling. And they did it over a period of time with 90 women who had PCOS. And seed cycling outperformed metformin on so many different categories of hormonal balance, weight loss, and even ultrasounds of the ovaries showed that cysts were reduced. So it's important to do research about these things. Things like, for example, cold plunging. It's very controversial. But when we add that layer of the menstrual cycle onto the research, which there isn't much on that, we can actually see that it's more stressful for a woman to cold plunge, for example, in that late luteal phase and menstrual phase, because the womb actually needs to be warm to be able to like the body needs to be warm. That's why our temperature goes up after ovulation if you're doing the symptotherapy method. So do your research, basically. Have a look into it. Don't just take my word for it. I think it's important to see what's right for you and just check what you're already doing and just pick a few things. We don't need to do all the things.
To do all the things, but also check in with yourself and be like, how in touch I am with my cycle. How much do I love it? What symptoms do I get? Start at that base level.
Totally.
Yeah, I think this is like a good natural place to start.
Yeah.
And I also love, so your website is fantastic.
Thank you. Thank you.
Definitely, yeah, it's great. You can tell you're a graphic designer, it's beautiful. But it's so functional as well. And what I love about it is you can go on there, and I did the quiz last night. So I thought, well, if I'm talking to you, I better better see if I'm a good candidate for seed cycling. And you go through and it just asks you specific questions, and you'll click on it and it will give you a number. And then you've got a really cool way of explaining if you're between this is what seed cycling may or may not be for you. And then also you've got consultations to have with yourself, and you've also got naturopath as well.
Yeah, we have a naturopath, Taylor. She's amazing. She specializes in women's hormones and fertility, and we offer a mini consultation. So it's not a full-blown consultation, but it's if you're wanting to understand what are the next steps to get more customized support. Say if you've got PCOS or endometriosis, or you're not quite sure where to start, or you're transitioning off the pill, that's a really good place to start. And yeah, as you say, seed cycling is a very simple protocol, and where you start is, as you say, tuning into your body. That's really where it all starts. And you get the most out of seed cycling when you are practicing that relationship with your cycle. So yeah, the more help I can provide, and like you say, the quiz is great to check where you're at. And yeah, we've got lots on our Instagram as well if you want to come and have a chat.
You have also something that really caught my eye, which I am going to refer my clients to your website for this hack, is you actually got breathwork affirmations with a cycle. So you've broken down each cycle, like each stage, and then you've got breathe in for 4, hold for 4, like release for 4, like you're just doing some breath work, and then you read these beautiful affirmations that are in tune with how you're feeling within that cycle. And
Yes.
it's bloody brilliant. So I'm going to be sending people to that because it's
amazing. I love that you found that. Yeah.
Well, that speaks to me because that's what I do every day. So I was just like,
it's so connected. Yeah. Well, this is why our work crosses over, I think, quite nicely, because a lot of what we need to do here when you're at the very beginning is, first of all, break down the self-beliefs that we have about our cycle, about our body being broken, for example. And a lot of that comes down to the psychological side, and when you've got that on your side and you start tuning into your body, you can the world's your oyster. So
amazing. And I think also the word that you use is practice.
So
learning, self-discovering, practicing, being curious, questioning things. It's such a beautiful place to be. So if people want to buy the seeds, I know you've got a really cool subscription service as well. Where can they find you, and what's the best way of getting started?
Yeah, so you can jump onto our website, seedcycleblend.com, and that will change depending on your location, if you're in Canada or Australia, New Zealand. And yeah, come over to our Instagram as well. I think, like, as you said, in terms of the product, the subscription is the best option. You get 10% off with the subscription. The 3-monthly product is, again, discounted even more. So I would recommend that, because sometimes in a lot of cases, you need 3 months worth of seed cycling for your body to really calibrate the nutrients. And not just that, an egg can sometimes take up to 3 months to actually mature before it ovulates, which means if I started seed cycling now, in 3 months' time, I would be affecting the cycle that I ovulate in 3 months' time, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So the body needs time. That's why the 3 monthly product is the most affordable option and the most effective in terms of getting started.
I think the 3 monthly option is a good option too, because when you talk about therapeutic care or plants as medicine and stuff, it's not like a drug where drugs you take and it works pretty much straight away. The body at 3 months with plants or anything, that's kind of how long it takes for you to see, but also to be consistent. And see the results. You need to be consistent. Yeah, if you get the seeds from Rochelle and you try them like twice a week, and this isn't working, you actually need to.
Sorry. No, that's not part of the deal. No, you want to be consistent, and we've actually got something exciting coming in this month, actually, that's going to help people to stay consistent. It's something that I've created, a digital thing. I think you can probably guess what it is, but it's a digital thing that I needed because sometimes I can fall off the wagon. Like I go on a holiday, or, there's all sorts of reasons why we can get out of practice, but we've got a little tool that can help to track and keep you kind of accountable as you're developing that habit, because it is a habit. And in that 3 months, it's about creating the habit of seed cycling, but also learning your body. If we're talking about how long it took us to come to where we are now and be like, okay, and excited about our bodies. That's how much time you need when you're seed cycling as well, to get in tune with that part of your body. So embrace the time, enjoy the time, take your time. Let's slow it down instead of, rushing everything and wanting to get to I know it's annoying if you're in pain and suffering each month. I totally understand, but hang in there. It's all about the long game with seed cycling and overall hormonal health. So, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for having this great chat today about being on this movement that is changing people's lives.
Yeah, gosh, it just fires me up, really. I could just talk all day, but I'm so grateful to be here chatting with you. I love your work as well. I think it's so important that we have a holistic approach to female health, and cover all bases. So, yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. I hope this conversation has added value to your self-care journey and inspired positive changes in your life. If you enjoyed this episode, consider sharing it with a friend who might benefit from this episode. Don't forget to subscribe on Spotify or on your favourite podcast platform to stay up to date on future episodes. Your support means the world to me. I genuinely love hearing from you, so please take a moment to leave a review. Let me know which part of today's episode resonated with you the most. Your feedback guides the direction of this podcast, and I really appreciate each and every single one of you for being a part of this community. To fall in love with yourself is the first secret to happiness. To find out a bit more about the Studio Chat podcast, head over to my Instagram page, Studio Chat Podcast, or if you want to find out a bit more about my counselling private practice, head over to Instagram on self_care_studio. Or head over to my website, selfcarebybarbarathompson.com.au. I'm really looking forward to seeing you on the next episode. Until next time, take care of yourselves and keep embracing the journey of self-discovery.